Welcome to the B Sound Podcast. I'm Dan B. Today is September 3rd, 2021, and it's Friday. Friday's here again, so we're doing this podcast thing. Today I have a couple topics I want to talk about. It's going to be another kind of short podcast. So what I want to go over today is I released a new song for the Singularity Club members over on Bandcamp, link below, and it's called My Shadow. And this song, if you're an aspiring songwriter, or if you're a seasoned songwriter, you might be able to relate to, or any kind of creative here, you might be able to relate to the story I've gone through with this epic journey of a song. At least for me anyway. It's pretty epic. The other topics I want to hit today is there's a game called Ronios Tail, which I'll be doing a review of over on the Game Beaters channel. And if you watched this week's guest, he is the publisher of this game. And I wanted to discuss just a little bit of the background of that, of what's going on behind the scenes there, mentally, and how that process is coming along. And then finally, we're going to talk about the future of this podcast. And really what I want to do is get some feedback from you guys as to what you would like to see and hear for the podcast. All right, so let's get into the first topic, which is Bobobot, My Shadow. Now, My Shadow, this was kind of a long process coming up with this. The whole thing, the whole overall arching theme of Bobobot with this album, it tells a complete story. And we're at the part of the story where, known as like the first confrontation, the first big event that happens where, maybe the hero got knocked on their ass kind of thing. So I went from being comfortable with that and being like, hey, this is definitely the topic I want to do. And it ended up being way harder than I thought it was going to be. And it's because at first I had this pretty clear concept in my head of, well, I kind of want this to be between good and evil. And I wanted good to be represented by a certain instrumentation, and evil would be represented by a different instrumentation. It was like the best song I could think of to reference at the time of the inception of this is a song called Beelzebub by Tenacious D. I don't know if you've heard this song, but it's got Dave Grohl as the guest star who plays Satan. And it's basically a battle between Tenacious D and Satan for the souls of Tenacious D. And if Tenacious D wins, then instead of giving up their souls, Satan has to pay their rent for eternity or something like that. But the thing that they did that I thought was so genius behind this song was whenever Satan played, it was hard, heavy metal and ripping solos, and then when the D would play, Tenacious D would play, it was nice soft acoustics with really pretty harmonies and stuff, and they kind of built on that. And every time Satan did it was just full out metal, and then when they would come back to Tenacious D, it would be like, oh, well, now it's acoustic, but they're getting their confidence, and the song would build up. It was just a really great way to build a song, and tell a story at the same time, and have the music represent each of the characters that is in that story. And I thought, wow, what a cool thing to do. It's really ambitious. And it seemed maybe impossible. As the more I tried to do something similar, the more I was like, oh God, this is just sounding like the Tenacious D song, and I would dump it. So what I ended up doing was just trying to find other music that was kind of like that. And I ended up stumbling across some old Eminem records that I had. And this is a theme he's kind of done a few times where, you know, he's battling himself, and he'll use different voices of his own. Or in other cases, sometimes he'll have a guest rapper come in, and there'll be that other voice. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a cool idea, but what if I kept the idea of the different instruments for each? So I would have different voices for both of them, for both characters that are in this song, and then have the instruments be acoustic to represent one side and more electronica to represent the other side of it. And it just seemed like, oh, well, since I'm taking inspiration from Eminem already, you know, maybe I can kind of catch that wave he's on and do kind of a rap type of thing in my own way. And you'll if you hear the song, you'll hear that in there for sure. I've had several people comment on it since releasing it, being, I like it. It sounds like Eminem though. And that's fine. I'm fine with that, because that was kind of the main inspiration behind it. You know, and I'm not one of these people that worries like, oh my God, it's not original. Like, oh no, you know, show me something that is original. And you very well might find something that's original, but they probably got something from somewhere, right? Like, there's only so many notes to play in certain successions, and you know, if they're playing on a guitar or piano or whatever, it's going to be derivative of something. And so I just don't care about that part of it. I just want to create something, and if it sounds like something else, great. If it doesn't, great too. Just create. Just keep creating and keep honing the craft and making things different and pushing myself. And that's, you know, what being an artist is all about, at least to me. So, you know, I went through a lot of testing, a lot of just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And eventually, when I hit that stride of like, okay, well, I can make this into a rap. Well, that kind of just let the juices flow. And I, you know, was kind of realizing how Eminem raps and how he can take these rhymes and kind of put rhymes inside of rhymes and make it work that way, to where you don't even have to necessarily rhyme the last words. As long as you have like rhymes within the structure, it tends to still work. It's a really hard concept to explain, but, and they don't even have to be like true rhymes. I don't know the exact term for it, but my buddy Jeremy and I were talking about this the other day, and I think we called it like a blue rhyme, where it's not quite a rhyme. So it's something like, if you rhyme like the word man with jam, it's not quite a rhyme, but because, you know, man and jam, the M and the N don't quite rhyme, but it's close enough to where the ear doesn't care. And then you can go take that even further and kind of twist the way you pronounce words to make them rhyme, where it's like, oh, what's a good one? Something like, you got to move it, and then you can rhyme that with, let's say you move it with like violent. You can still do that as long as you kind of manipulate the way you say it. It'll still come out as like a rhyme to the ear. I suppose that makes sense. So anyway, I think that taking this leap has helped my own personal confidence even more. Like I'm already pretty confident that I can do a song a month and make it listenable and make it a good song that people will find value in. But this just was like, well, I'm going to push myself really hard, lean really hard into something that I haven't done much of. And by doing so and by completing the task, it really pushed me in new ways that I think can only help me in the future as an artist. And it's probably, out of the people who have heard it, because it's a very select audience, I would say that maybe 1% of the people who follow me or know me are Singularity Club members. So there's not very many of you. So I do value you guys a lot, because you guys give me the feedback I need to really understand the audience that this is being made for. You know, I'm making them for myself, and I'm making them to tell a grand story, but at the same time, I'm very aware of you guys. You know, it's like being on stage. I was talking about this the other day with somebody, and essentially I was saying, when you're on stage, they had said to me, if you start playing music, and if you're on stage and you play music, if you're playing it for the audience, you're fucked. And I said, well, I kind of disagree with that. I get it, but I disagree, because I think that when you're on stage, you're aware the audience is there, but you're in a zone it doesn't matter that they're there. And that's the zone to be in. Yeah, so not necessarily that you're trying to not play for the audience, but you're trying to find that flow or that zone where you can give the audience everything, because you are one with what you're doing. Anyway, I hope that little diatribe made sense. So anyway, I would say that the feedback I've gotten has been really good. And it seems like people would want more of this, but I'm not necessarily going to dive right back in and do this again. But it's like another little thing in my arsenal now that I can use at any time. And I wouldn't put it past the creative process for this to come out again, this type of thing, at least once before the album is done. So I think what I learned most of all about this whole thing, about this time creating this song called My Shadow for Bobobot, is that to lean into your fears, just like anything else in life, lean into those fears and really get down and dirty with things that you know you can do, but you're maybe scared to do it. And I do that more and more every day, not only with music, but just with life in general. You know, doing this podcast was me leaning into a fear. And I know I don't speak the best here right now, but I speak way better than I did a couple of years ago. In fact, I saw a Facebook Live I did in 2017 came up in my memories today. And I took a look at it. It was me talking for about 25 minutes. And I might have said, I don't know, like 40 complete sentences, because I was nervous. I was drinking a lot of water. You know, I wasn't drinking, because that's just not something I really do very often. But the point is, leaning into the fear and just working at it and trying to do what I want to do and then doing it, it just makes you better, right? So if anything, I would encourage everybody to lean in to what you want to do more and more. And if it doesn't work, fuck it. You don't have to keep it, but you can make it work. That's my point. That's the whole thing I wanted to say. So let's move on to the next topic, which is Ronios Tail. Now, this is an NES cartridge that was sent to me through a YouTuber on Twitter had recommended the Game Beaters for somebody who reviews NES games, which I love to do. I love NES games, and I love new NES games. Like, to me, that's the ultimate thing, is that they're making new NES games. And a lot of them are pretty decent. I wouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them are pretty decent. So I thought, yeah, I haven't done a review in a long time. I had put the channel on hiatus for a while. I've had this health issue I've been working on and still working on, and it seems to be going well. And I'll continue to work on this too, but I thought to myself, well, what a fun opportunity, right, to get this cartridge sent to me from a studio that has other games that I like and get to review it. And so kind of what happened with that is that in that process of getting the cartridge sent, I started talking with the person who was sending the cartridge, and I was just like, hey, I'd like to talk about this on the podcast. I think that'd be fun to get one of your creators to, speak about what they do or what you do at your studio. And, maybe that would be helpful to people out there, other creatives who want to get something published. So that seemed like a cool idea, and they were like, yeah, let's do it, and hooked me up with the founder of, or I guess a co-founder of Megacat Studios. And that we had a good conversation. You can watch it on here already. It's already up to be watched. But the one thing I want to say about this, there'll be a review. I'm working on a review now that you can watch over on the Game Beaters channel eventually. Hopefully by this weekend sometime. But I run into this weird thing of, because they sent me this game, I have this, we have this thing in us, like reciprocity. It's like a law of psychology, the law of reciprocity. When someone gives you something, you feel the need to give them back something. And I see it all the time in YouTube. People, they get something for free and they give it a good review because they got it for free. And that's not something I want to do. I want to give a 100% honest review. And so when let me just put it this way. I like the game. And overall, it's going to have a good review. But when I get to the points where, hey, I don't like this part, or this part could use some work, it feels shitty of me, right? And in the end, I would rather feel a little shitty but be honest than to be dishonest and just skip over the shitty stuff, right? Like, I want to give authentic reviews and authentic opinions and my authentic me to the audience, because otherwise, why do it? Why even speak to you guys if it's not real? And so it's like, how do I get this out there and not feel shitty about it? But I think it's just, the answer to that is basically just be yourself and know that you did the best job you could. See, I guess another reason I'm bringing this up is because this happened before with a cartridge that I had gotten in the mail, and I didn't like the game. And rather than do a video on it, I just didn't. and I kind of left them high and dry in the air. And to me, that was wrong, right? Like, I should have been forthcoming. I should have at least wrote to them and said, hey, this is not doing it for me. I would rather not do this than to soil your name, something like that. But instead, I ended up doing like a, I forget what you call that. It's like a contract that I made up on my own, right? Just something I've made up in my head that had no basis in reality. And, I think that while I did learn a lesson from that, and I think that's good, that relationship I have with the person who sent that to me is probably hurt from that. And I suppose if I want to repair that, I should probably reach out to them. And I think I've tried to in the past, because this happened, I would say, 2018, this happened a while back. But yeah, it's never been the same. They've never trusted me again, and I understand why. So I don't want to fall into that again either. So anyway, with Ronios Tail, just go ahead and look for that. That's coming up. If you're into that, if you're into gaming, I think you'll like the review. I think it's coming out pretty good. It's coming along well. And honestly, it's a fun game. So in the end, I'm glad that I've had this whole experience with it. Okay, so third and final topic for today is I wanted to discuss, we had this guest on last week, and I wanted to just discuss the future of the podcast with different guests. Now, I think I might have another one coming up for this week, and that's good, and I'm happy about it, and I'm excited to have them on the show. However, it seems like the numbers here, at least on YouTube, this is a YouTube exclusive right here, this podcast, of the solo podcast part. The rest of the podcasts are always going to be on Spotify and stuff. But it would seem here on YouTube, the podcasts that have the guests, unless it's been a big musician like Gary Lee Conner or Steve Albini, they're just not hitting with anybody. I'm seeing more views on a podcast like this that's just solo than a podcast that has a cool person in the industry who is very helpful and valuable to everybody. So what I guess I'm trying to ask is, I'm trying to figure out do you think I should move the guest podcasts off of here and give them their own channel, and then people who are into that can go to there? Or do I keep it on this channel and just people who are interested can find it through other means, right? Because I guess this is a music channel, and that's probably why the Gary Lee Conner one does well, or the Steve Albini does well. But someone in video games, I've had a couple of video game people on now, creators who create video games or authors, and it just doesn't hit very well. And part of that is, it's kind of up to the guest to share as well, share with their audience, so that, because it's going to be valuable to their audience to see these things, right? And if they don't share it with their audience while I'm sharing with mine, it's only going to get my audience, which is either music or video games. But this channel in particular is more music based. So I guess what I'm asking is, what do you guys want to see here? Do you guys want to see me move the podcast with guests off of this channel? Because I'm really leaning that way right now. Or do you think it's more valuable to keep them here? And that's just something I'd love to hear from you about. If there's any guests that you'd like to see on here, I'm more than happy to contact them. This next upcoming guest that I have, that I hope to be getting anyway, we're in discussion, is a producer, a music thing. So perhaps that'll be more to your liking. I'm going to just have to see maybe the guests I have to be less varied than what I've been having. I thought, let's make this just a channel about creatives and how they can contribute, because I think it spans throughout the whole creative industry. Like, you can take an author, you can take a video game creator or a musician, and almost all the same principles apply. That's one thing I've been learning across the board. Heck, you can even take a business person and the way that they conduct things. It all kind of is along the same guidelines. If you figure out that these people are all doing something very similar, you can start to see the patterns that emerge and how they're finding success, and you can apply that to yourself. So I felt like it was very valuable to everybody out there to do this. But perhaps you guys aren't seeing what I'm seeing, so that's what I want to know. What are you seeing, and what would you like to see? So with that being said, I appreciate if you would like this video, or dislike it if you don't. Subscribe to the channel. Share and share and share. The more you share, the better it is for us. If you're interested in the music, please go over to Bandcamp and look up Dan B or BoboBot, and you'll find me, and you can join the Singularity Club, and that helps support this channel. It helps support the music and everything else. And that's kind of just an extra thing. You know, obviously you don't have to do any of this stuff. I appreciate that you're just here and listening. But I know that with creators that I enjoy, I like to go support them in different ways, depending on who they are and what they do. And yeah, I guess that's about it for today. Until next time, be sound.